Hey everyone, how's it going? Octopus here and welcome back to evercrisis. We're going to be talking about Zack and Matt's new banner that just came out. Matt is actually really important on this banner as well, not just Zack featuring his costume, but one of the main questions I know you're going to have is there going to be another Final Fantasy VII crossover banner? At the looks of it, with less than 7 days left, I don't think so. So if you guys are going to pull in for Tifa, go for Tifa. If you're saving for the half anniversary, save for the half anniversary. From the near side of the game, half anniversary brought on power creep of like new power, new utility. You're kind of seeing it in this banner and other banners as well too, but honestly, don't stress it. Pull for what you want. Like I keep saying, I know you guys are here for the best of the best, but when I've been looking through all my characters, you can literally run anything as long as you focus on that character. So just focus on a character, have fun with it, and it will be strong enough to pass the content. So let's jump in. Let's talk about Matt, and let's talk about Zack's new weapon and costume. All right, so let's jump in and let's talk about Zack's costume. Because if you are going to pull in a banner, you're pulling for the costume. So you're either going to be pulling for Tifa's costume, Red 13's costume, or Zack's costume. You're not looking at the weapons when it comes to this banner specifically because you can wish list everything. You could also guarantee yourself a copy of either weapon by just pulling up to 6 stamps if you don't want to try the RNG wish listing. But we're here to see, is this banner worth spending crystals on? And we're going to base that on the costume itself. So this gives Zack HP boost, which most of his costumes do. He is one of those self-sustaining characters. He's solo story, so he's built towards protecting himself, taking care of himself, buff himself, debuffing. He has everything in his kit. HP survivability in this game is very important, so it's a great stat to have, especially when you go to those harder floors, like floor 70 for the Behemoth, Bahamut fight. You need that survivability. You can't just pump pure DPS in your units. So if your costume can take care of the HP, it's worth it. So this is more high-end game utility. Most of the time you can get away with just running a full DPS, Arcana, Mastery, whatever costume that has both actual buffs for damage. Now, buff debuff extension is something new to our game, and I think it's totally worth it when it comes to characters like Zack. Zack will benefit highly from increasing his duration just by this costume alone up to 40%, and then you put something like Morningstar from Yuffie's weapon or future weapons. Later on, they're going to have a mixture of damage with this utility. This becomes a very good setup for Zack himself. I think this is a huge improvement for Zack. Obviously, a lot of people want to lean towards their DPS doing as much DPS as possible, but since his new weapon comes with a buff duration and his other weapons have great utility and they're going to be the main weapons that are going to be on your setup anyways, having a longer debuff or buff means you can spend more ATB DPSing. So in the end result, it's not an Arcanum, it's not a Mastery, it's not a boost towards any of the other boost attack stance, but it does equal damage when you calculate how much ATB per damage you're doing, because you don't have to spend it on buffing yourself. And with Zack's new overcompensated weapon, this thing's ridiculous. He saw Sephiroth and he's like, yeah, I need that. I need a longsword. It looks great. Everything about it looks fantastic. Is it worth going out of your way to pull for an HP buff duration? You won't see that until you hit really hard content, again, for survivability, and the longer your buffs last, the better it is for yourself and the party. Now, Zack's weapon himself, itself, is really good. This sword has 700% physical non-elemental crit potential, and it increases your physical attack to mid to high just by having one copy, but it is a 5 ATB weapon. And I know at first glance that seems like, oh, that's terrible, but when you put this whole setup together, compared to like Tifa's or Cloud's, if you look at it in that perspective of 5 ATB with a buff, all in one weapon, it actually is pretty good. If you hear like claws, that's my dog walking by. So the whole thing is like, you got to look at a party setup of 3 characters, 6 slots of weapons, C abilities, right? Zack has 2, other character has 2, the other character has 2. When you start combining these abilities into one weapon, you're now able to open up the second hand slot. So compared to Tifa's weapon, where it's just buffing herself, right? Or sorry, she has no buff on herself, she's just damaged. She now has to bring in another character to buff her, like Yuffie, the healer, or anyone else, Glenn, to increase physical attack. Or she has to use her second slot, which is Amaranth Claws, to buff herself. But she used 2 weapons to do the effects of one weapon that Zack has. Now, you might be asking, okay, well, is this the same amount of power, less power? When you're talking about this minuscule of the damage compared to Tifa. Tifa is a stronger DPS, right? But Zack has now compacted all his utility into this one attack, and his damage isn't far off from Tifa's or Cloud's or Glenn Ultimatic setup. You're very talking about like little bit of difference, maybe 1,000, 2,000 here or there, depending on how much our abilities, how your max attack is. You're not going to really care at that point because you have so much power just by pulling this weapon, and its R abilities are fantastic. Fully maxed out, it's 40 physical attack and 36 boost to the ability potency for attack stance. He's got a circle sigil in the back, and he goes up to 1,400 damage. This thing is incredibly powerful. At OB6, high buff on himself, and he'll be recasting that with 30 seconds in his new costume. You're constantly having this thing up. It is great. He'll be potentially just doing max DPS. So, huge physical attack at max, 566, circle sigil, buff attack, 1,400, and amazing R abilities, not even for himself, but also for anyone in the game. And another thing is that Zack doesn't have to use this as his main weapon. You might be saying, oh, well, you're going to be casting it over and over. 5 ATB is expensive. Attack animation plus 5 ATB, right? It's going to hurt some quests. But overall, it is going to be just one of those weapons you can stick on the second hand, right? First hand, second hand, doesn't matter where it is. It's going to be there for a buff, right? Tifa, an example, has a self buff. Glenn has a self buff technically, or anyone, but you have to spend 4 ATB to use the Final Fantasy 9 weapon for Tifa to give herself a buff, and then you got to use your buff weapon, or sorry, then your main hand weapon to attack. So for a total of 8 ATB, Tifa buffs herself and then attacks, where Zack, one weapon, 5 ATB, has the buff and the attack. And obviously after the buff's applied, you don't want to spend 5, but again, the amount of ATB to damage, it doesn't really matter. He's going to be doing tons of damage, so it's definitely worth. Here's a Zack that doesn't have anything of the new banner. 3,881 attack. He's at max boost attack. He's got 48 boost attack, or sorry, physical attack 57. He's got boost attack ability potency of 34. And this is actually a very solid setup. This Zack does a ton of damage, clears a lot of stuff, has a debuff on his main weapon, and these are the sub weapons that I use. Enemy Launcher, Killer Hornet, and Ultimatic, making Zack very, very powerful. If Zack put his new setup on here where he used a new weapon, he would just slap it in the front, get that attack boost potency, put this Black Whiskers in the second slot. He would have max out physical attack just from that setup alone. And then you would work on your back weapons, and I'm going to kind of show you a wish list if you are going to go for this. So this isn't a bad banner, but you can just wish list these weapons later on. Things to consider to wish list if you are pulling for this: Ultimatic 100% for any physical DPS in the game. This thing's an amazing back weapon, has boost attack and physical attack potency for attack stance. Black Whiskers to complement Zack's setup. Or other things to consider for Zack is his other weapon, the Twinkling Star, just for the utility and the survivability, but it also has boost physical attack potency, right? If you need more survivability, this is your answer. Lowers magic attack and lowers physical defense. It's a win-win. So I prefer the Black Whiskers because it's much more powerful. It has really good 2 setup. Not a lot of water weapons in the game, so lowering the water defense down is nice. At OB6, you go from mid to mid, right? And then later on, you get to go to high for water resistance down. But still really good setup, has the boost attack 54 on it, which makes it very good. You have other choices like Cutlass, and you have the Arc one, which lowers magic defense or physical defense if you don't have the other choices. And because of the buff duration from the costume, works out beautifully. Enemy Launcher, self-explanatory. Not a lot of boost attack, but it has 48 boost physical attack potency, which if you put this plus the main weapon he has, his new one, Zack's new weapon, Enemy Launcher, and that is going to be increasing you to exactly 60, which is more than you need for max. So 1 Enemy Launcher with boost attack, then you slap that on and you're good to go. And if you want to, you can use Zweinhinder on your offhand instead of Black Whiskers for the 40 boost attack. And that way your next 2 weapons could be Heavy Hauser mixed with Ultimatic, and that will clean up the rest of your need. right? And then if you don't have Heavy Hauser, OB Max, OB6 Shinra Blade also works because it gives you the extra 15 points there. To take one to an example, if you guys go look at my cloud, this cloud in the back, if you look, our abilities, 15 R ability along with attack stance is maxed out. You guys can see I'm at 4,225, fully boosted, right? And that's because of Ultimatic, Killer Hornet, and Shinra Blade. So really good setup for physical DPS. Those are great things to go forward to. Just try to get that whole setup. His costume, everything else, he looks like a fantastic unit. Have fun with them. All right, next up is Matt, and Matt he just became one of the better healers in the game, if not the best. Now, for Matt's setup, we're going to be looking at this as, again, a group situation. Same thing with Zack's weapon. He has utility double upped in one slot. I'm going to explain that a little bit clearer afterwards, but Centipede is one of the most fantastic weapons I've seen in a while for healing. It just has everything that you would want. Does it replace your healing weapon that Matt already has? I think it complements it. You can use Prime Number and Centipede together. If you have a Prime Number that's over boosted to like 6 or close to it, you're going to be using that because of all the heal potency. But you got to look at these setups as an overall party. What is Centipede? What does it do? Just one copy of this weapon gives you 42% AoE healing and physical defense up increase for the entire party. Barrett's the only other character in the game that can do that, but Matt can do it better because he has it all in one slot and he can still use a second weapon, where Barrett is stuck with healing weapon, assault gun. He's stuck with those two choices. He can only heal and physical defense. Matt can do more. Matt can add another weapon for any situation, raising magic defense AoE, giving the Prime Number for better heals. Anything he wants to do, he can now do because this is all in one slot. It has our ability max of 54 healing, which is huge, right? This is actually a healing weapon I would want to wish list because of the R abilities on it. So you get close to 80% healing and max is 100%. That is fantastic all in one slot, plus buff duration, right? 24 points, getting you to 120% with a costume later on, Morning Star, whatever you want for your character that has buff duration on a sub weapon. Then on top of it, it has a flat 20% increase heal materia slot. So your Esuna healing materias, your Cura materia, you're going to have a huge single target heal on top of your AoE healing, and then mixing this with Prime Number, Matt can just do whatever you want. He became the all-round healing unit. He's actually top tier healing right now. It's just because of the R abilities alone. And again, at an overall, you got to realize there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 C abilities you can bring into a fight. And if you look at Aerith, guard stick, or the event weapon here, just to get good healing potency in there, you're going to see my healing potency is at 69. Nice. But look how much I had to do to get to that 69, right? I have 1, 2, 3, 4 healing weapons on there. I do have guard stick now that I've increased it, but you can see guard stick's not as good. It just doesn't bring it up 25, 30 because it has a little bit more because it's OB1. But my point is that Matt has everything mixed into one. So Matt can now put in healing, AoE defense, Prime Number if he needs the extra heals. If he doesn't, more utility, defense down, attack down, whatever he gets in his kit. He just took one of the 6 slots, and instead of using 2 weapons, he's using 1. Where Barrett would have to do healing for 2 slots, right? Here's a healing Barrett. He has to do W machine plus his healing weapon, or healing weapon plus assault gun for physical defense up. You now took one of the 6 slots. This is what makes these weapons so powerful. Matt's weapon and Zack's weapon have double utility, which means you now have more utility for the entire setup of the party, not just for themselves. So I think Centipede is a great addition. It's actually one of the best healing weapons in the game, depending on the situation. And again, Prime Number can just be mixed with it to make up for the lack of healing percentage that this thing has. But it kind of balances itself out when its R ability is at 46 at OB6. And buff duration on top of it, really, really good healing I think these are weapons you don't want to sleep on. You want to pick up at least one. Zack's weapon could be used like Amaranth Claws or self-buffing. Doesn't have to be used for its attack. And then use Winehinder or anything else that he has in his party, like an AoE win from Falchion, whatever he gets, right? So it doesn't have to be used for its physical attack, but it definitely is worth it. And again, Matt's weapon, so much utility in one slot. So that's it. That's pretty much everything, guys. Whatever you want to do from this point on. Again, I went through all my characters. I've buffed up my characters from other characters' weapons to use them as a main DPS. And you can make anything work in this game as long as you build up those sub-weapons and the character's main hand weapon. Some characters lack damage when it comes to just their first weapons, like Red 13 doesn't have a physical attack up R ability on his main hand or offhand, giving him a little bit of harder trouble trying to get that max damage. That's currently what I'm battling with his Rage Caller. But you can make anything super powerful in this game if you just focus on their kit. So if you want Zack to DPS, go for Zack. If you want Tifa to DPS, go for Tifa's weapon, but you're going to spend upwards of 80,000 plus to get a really good Tifa setup. It's limited, be careful. But any banner, any character you go for will work out. So have fun with it, pull, enjoy. Besides that, thank you guys so much for watching. Keep on smiling, and I'll smell you later.